Retired at 40 here. I've got my new Harvestright standard size freeze dryer, and today I want to make a video about the initial setup and then go through the entire freeze drying process from start to finish. The reason being is when I got mine about 3 weeks ago, I couldn't find a good video that explained everything from start to finish, including the setup, and I'm not a very good learner from going through a bunch of pamphlets and stuff. Most of them contradict each other and they're not real thorough. There's not really a lot of pictures to describe things. So I figured if you're a visual learner like me, this video should be beneficial for you. So here's most of the stuff that came in the package when you get all the wrapping and all that stuff taken off. I was pleasantly surprised because mine actually came with some Mylar bags and some oxygen packets, and it came with the Mylar bag sealer and then an extra sealer strip. I'm assuming they wear out over time. So manual. Mine actually came with some oil too, so for the first cycle, which is really nice. And there's the pump. I'm not sure if there's different versions of the pump. Mine was the Eliminator. It's made by Just Better, and so far seems to be doing the trick. So like I said earlier, mine is the standard size. It has 4 trays, and I believe it's supposed to do 6 to 8 pounds on average of food when you're doing a freeze dry process. So let's get started on kind of going through and setting everything up on the outside of the machine. First things first, you definitely want to elevate the machine. Reason being, this drain valve right here on the side, you'll need to open that at the end of the process, and that will actually defrost and put water into a bucket just from the drying process. And it has to be done every time. If you have it sitting flat on the floor, it's actually it won't drain. You need something that's sitting lower than the drain valve. So the drain valve was already hooked up on mine. It was actually just tucked up inside of this hole right here. Just pulled it out and stuck it in a bucket and we were good. Mine's sitting probably about 12 inches off the ground. Ideally, I would maybe even do a little taller than that. It also makes it easier for the pump maintenance at the end of each cycle, and just kind of makes it a little easier. It's more chest level than, or waist level, I guess, than if it was sitting on the ground. Next thing you want to do is hook up your pump, and it should come with this line right here. One line, you don't need Teflon tape or anything, it just screws right onto the fittings. One side of the line goes into the actual machine, other side goes down into this brass nipple and screws onto there. And then there should be a mister, which is just a piece of plastic. You want that facing up, and you might want to just keep some towels and stuff around. If this pump does get hot, it does blow out some oil every once in a while, which makes a pretty big mess. I might try and fashion up something that will go over the mister that will still let it breathe, but will catch most of that oil that comes out. Next thing you need to do is unscrew this brass cap here. That's where your oil goes in. I like to keep a funnel handy just because it's hard to get this little thing down in here without spilling oil everywhere. You want to fill up your oil level so it matches with these guys here, just over the center little circle there. And then for future reference, or before you actually put oil in, you're going to want to make sure that this valve down here, which is the drain valve for the oil, just make sure that's closed. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, that's always the rule of thumb to go by, so make sure it's all the way to the right. Like I said, mine came with an actual quart of oil, which was nice. You will have to buy some more oil eventually because it does evaporate over usage. And 1 quart you'll have a little extra after the first batch. So you might be able to get 2 batches out of the oil, and then after that you'll have to filter it, which I'll show you later in the video. Okay, so after your pump is hooked up, I like to set mine off to the side here so it hangs over, and I can show you that in another video. When you do the oil changes, it's just nice to be able to put an oil pan or something down in here to catch your oil after you're done, and it's nice to do it while the oil's warm because you get all the crud out of there. So next, after you plug it into the wall, obviously, there's a switch back here. That'll turn the machine on. Alright, once your screen comes on, you'll see set date, time, customize, and start. And then there's a clock over here with the date. Just go ahead and hit start. And then that will remind you to close the drain valve on the side. It's just kind of a courtesy thing that they do after or before every cycle. They're referring to this drain valve over here, which currently is closed because it's going against the way the valve is. If it's open, it will actually be going the same way as the valve. So that's closed. You want it closed because otherwise the vacuum will not increase, and it'll probably actually give you a warning if you accidentally do leave it open. So next thing is, if your machine hasn't already been adjusted on the door, there's 2 screws on the bottom here and 2 screws on the top, and that just kind of adjusts this door so it matches up against, see if I can get a decent picture here, against this seal, and you can actually see when it's pressed up against there. Once it starts to vacuum, you'll want to be able to see this whole seal just kind of pressed up against that glass. There is an insulation little pillow thing in here that just keeps the cold in and keeps moisture and all that stuff in. So I've got my 4 trays all loaded up with nectarines, peaches, cantaloupe, and peppers, and a little bit of pulled pork on here. Try and keep your consistency of your moisture in the food. Try and keep it the same until you get used to the machine. It'll kind of make your life a lot easier. Otherwise, some things will be dry and some things will not be dry. So go ahead and close the door after you put your insulation back in there. And it kind of clicks, and then once you twist it, that pulls the door in. And going back to the screen again, after you've closed your drain valve, just hit continue. And that will start your 9 hours of freezing. You can hear the compressor kick on, so it actually will take the machine down to, I think it's about negative 30 degrees. And that 9 hours is standard every time. So I will catch you after that 9 hours is done for the next part of the process. Looks like we're just finishing up the freeze cycle. Got 10 seconds left. And as soon as that counts down to 0, then it'll go into the drying. And that sound is the compressor. When it first kicks on, it's a little loud, but it does quiet down after a few seconds. So if you look at the screen now, it just goes into drying, and then this right here, the 2500, right now it says greater than 2500. As it continues to dry, that number will go down, and as soon as it gets down below 500 consistently for half an hour, then it will go to the next cycle, which is the final dry, and I'll catch you then. Looks like we're in the final dry time, and it's real hard to catch. I was going to try and catch it right when it switched over, but it's dependent on this vacuum pressure right here. So it kind of, that middle section of the drying, it can be 5 hours sometimes it can be 12 hours. It just depends on the moisture that is in the food that you put in. So right now we've got 5 hours and 41 seconds. The stuff that I am freeze drying has a lot of water content, so if you're doing something like cucumbers or watermelon or grapes or something like that, blueberries, I usually add a little bit of extra time. So in this case I'm going to add 2 hours extra, and the way that you do that is just hit this up button right here. So now I've added 2 hours onto there. That should give it enough time to get all the rest of the moisture out. The basic, or the standard time that it automatically sets is 7 hours. So like I said, if you're drying something that has a lot of water in it, you're going to want to add some time to it. And I actually have a PDF file that I can send to you if you message me that has a good rule of thumb for certain types of foods. I can even give a picture of that on the video here coming up. Alright, looks like we're a few seconds away from the final dry time being up, and this low pressure right here at 146 vacuum pressure, that's a good sign. That means that it's every batch that I've done, it's usually in between 100 and 200, and if it's in there, it usually seems like it's all the way dry. So the vacuum pump shuts off after it's all the way done with the final dry. And this just gives you a chance to basically check and see if everything is dry. So in order to do that, you have to open the drain valve, which is over here. And that'll let all the air out. And then once you do that, pressure should be released here. There's the tangerines. Peaches all look dry. Cantaloupe and pulled pork. And more pulled pork and a few peppers. And everything looks dry. So since it's dry, next thing you want to do is click this defrost button. If it was not dry, then you can hit more dry time. That'll give you that same screen that was in the last one, which you can add time onto. You can also do a no defrost, and then the machine will actually just defrost itself over time just from the room temperature or whatever. The defrost will actually speed up the process, and it will come out of that same, that's where your bucket comes in, or your pan, or whatever you put under your drain. That's where that comes into play, because as the machine defrosts, it'll go into there. So I'm going to hit defrost on mine. It just tells you to remove the food and close the door. I don't put the insulation pillow back in. Click continue. And then that'll take 2 hours. And you can add more time if you want. 2 hours is usually sufficient. What I usually do at this time, while the oil's hot, is this is when I change the oil, just because it gets all the crud out of the bottom. We're all done here. This is Retired at 40. Just reminding you to live life simple. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.